Afternoon all. I thought it'd be interesting to check out the new Houdini 3.0 which has just arrived on scene, available for download. So is it actually really much stronger than 2.0? Is it worth changing my analytical assistant, upgrading it? Well, there was a serious challenge match for Houdini 3 set up last month. 3 long matches between the Houdini 3 beta version and the other top engines, which were Houdini 2.0C, Stockfish 2.31 and Komodo 5. By the way, no mention of Ribka there. There's a lot of controversies around. Let's not get into them. But in the match against the old predecessor, so Houdini 3 playing against its great predecessors, the match consisted of 120 games at 90 minutes each, but 30-second increment per move. And it started from 60 Noomen opening positions, played from both sides. So to balance things up, they're both having the start positions imposed on each other, the same ones. Halfway through the match they'll flip over. So here we see Houdini 3.0 playing white, and we get a Sicilian defence, and these are all book moves, so let's just go through them. All book, open Sicilian. Now the Keres attack, named after Keres, the crown prince of chess, one of the strongest players never to become world champion. I think it was unlucky with the timing of World Wars and other stuff. So knight c6, rook g1. This is all books still so far, and black plays this h5. Okay, g takes h5, knight takes, bishop g5, knight f6, queen d2, all books still. Queen b6, hitting the knight on d4, knight retreats, a6, preparing maybe a later b5. Castle's queenside, queen c7. So the b pawn's now prepared to move. There might be some other possibilities like knight b4. In fact, this is a curious move. So we're out of book now, and there's evaluations here. White thinks it's about half a pawn advantage at this point, 0.48. Black thinks it's not so bad. It's minus 0.31. Now this a3 move looks like prophylaxis of some sort. Knight e5, knight d4, knight h7, and white here plays an interesting decision to give up the bishop pair with king b1, and in return for giving up the dark square bishop, okay, let's try and evaluate the position here. White's got some opportunities like f4 and g6 to gain space. Now you can imagine if that pawn moves forward, then e6 might be more sensitive for f5 later. So let's see how the game continued. Knight c6, f4, bishop d7. Okay, black's got the bishop pair. Okay, but so did Kasparov against Ivanchuk in that very eventful game where Ivanchuk crushed Kasparov, squashing the two bishops. Will the two bishops, the bishop pair, be squashed in this game? So g6, f6. Knight takes c6 is played here. B takes c6. Not bishop takes c6, you might think is a viable option, but okay, with b6 we can imagine that rook b8 later without dropping a6 might be handy in some positions. For the moment, I think the rook is concerned about the pawn here. a5, taking away that concern, maybe freeing up for rook b8 later. Rook g f1, a quiet move behind the pawn, but it does support f5 now, gaining more space, squeezing black, and maybe squeezing this bishop is becoming evident. This dark square bishop is like a prisoner at the moment, and maybe dare not play d5 because there's going to be a sacrifice on d5 of the king in the centre if d5 is dared to play, perhaps. But white doesn't need to rely on black playing d5. White goes for the h file with rook h1. A couple of rooks come off. Is this really an advantage for white? Well, Houdini 3.0 assesses this as now over a pawn advantage, 1.31. Black also thinks it's not doing so hot after having to play king e7 at minus 0.79. Bishop b3, rook e8. The rook comes in, infiltration. Queen a7, king a2. Now, there's a weakness of the last move here. Maybe black is becoming stuck for moves here. Black plays black is eyeing the d4 square at the moment and comes off d4 with queen b8, allowing a weakness of the last move. Queen d4, which looks like a powerful centralization now, afforded by that queen retreat. Eyeing f6, keeping a check on maybe a4 from black. maybe creating some new possibilities now, like e5, and this diagonal could become sensitive if e5 is a dangerous break. And black looks desperate now, actually. After queen d4, Houdini 3.0 rates the position now as 2.15. This is a breaking point for black already, this position. Believe it or not, I think it must be the e5 break. If black dares play e5, of course this diagonal's hugely weakened, and maybe even queen c4, but we'll check that in the second pass of the game. a4 looks like desperation, sacking a pawn here. Knight takes c5. So what's the idea? Queen goes to d3, queen b5, queen exchange is refused with c4, and then the knight comes back. Thanks very much, extra pawn. Pawn up, king d8, the king's still in trouble, and now bishop d1, queen b7, and now f5. Queen is supporting that f5, so e6 and then d5 is being undermined. Queen a6, bishop g4, putting even more pressure on e6. Bishop e7, black is getting squashed. Rook h7, go back and protect g7. The engine is calling to the other one. Now f takes e6, winning yet another pawn. It looks fairly hopeless and dire. So it seems that this black bishop never got a chance in this game. It looks all over. Black thinks it's like -4 pawns down nearly. So it would resign if it was allowed to. Knight e2, queen b7. White thinks, well, the evaluation is getting worse and worse after this knight maneuver. So once the knight comes, I guess, to f5, that's doom spelled out. f5 is played as another desperate move, actually. E takes f, and after bishop f6, yes, will Houdini 3.0 manage to spot the mate in one threat? Well, for the moment, it suspends doing anything about that. It plays queen takes d6 check, and after king c8, actually the game was adjudicated here. Black thought it was doing very badly anyway at -5.64, and the game was adjudicated as a win to white. Okay, so let's just check with our old Houdini 2.0, which got beaten up in this game, and it's confirming a big evaluation advantage for white. Just coming back to defend against cheap mate threat. And then what is black left with here? Is it rubble? Let's try rook d8, queen takes c5, losing another pawn. This is just nothing. It's just nothing. All these pawns. So where did black actually go wrong? Let's have a look at this. Is it the opening book's fault? Is this Keres line just very good for white? This h5, is it a bit dodgy? An idea at the moment. The engine's not too displeased with black. So where did it start to go wrong? Is there a fault in our old Houdini 2.0's evaluation of the bishop pair, for example, comes to mind? Let's see. Here, after knight h7, which is prompted, knight h7 as a candidate move to try and get the bishop pair. On the other hand, can black easily do anything else apart from knight h7, like try and castle queenside? If we went for, let's just check this out. f4. Let's just try and play a different plan of trying to castle queenside. Is this actually plausible? Say castle queenside here. Possibly. Okay, but let's go with the game continuation. So in the game, knight h7 was actually chosen, and black takes off the bishop here. It's not mentioned, but a certain depth taking off the bishop at depth 16, but this is only a very brief light analysis. So on this time control of 30 seconds per move, 90 minutes each, 30 seconds per move, black chose knight takes g5, getting the bishop pair. Where is knight takes g5 at the moment? It is there on the third choice at the moment. I can see it anyway. It's just out of your view here, I'm afraid, of the recording area. This is at depth 17. So it's looking at b5 and bishop d7 as the two alternatives, as well as knight takes g5 here. It looks from a human point of view as if knight takes g5 was furthering white's advantage, perhaps a little bit more than the others, but there's not much in the evaluation here between 0.46 and 0.57 of b5 against knight takes g5. So we're at depth 18 now, and I've got quite bad hardware here, to be honest. On this machine, this is an ancient machine which I should have changed ages ago. This is just an old Core 2 Duo, I'm afraid. So I think we're going to have to trust that knight takes g5 eventually got to the top of the pile for the hardware being used in this match. I'll give you the PGN in the description of the video. Maybe some of you have got much more powerful hardware, I suspect most of you, and could check this position maybe with your engines to see the attraction of knight takes g5 here. So let's just go with it. Knight takes g5. And where did white's advantage really increase? Well, g6 here looks to be furthering white's advantage. Now if bishop takes c6 was played, what was the problem with that? f5 again, it's just immediately undermining the d5 control. So knight d5, getting onto those lines is going to be very, very dangerous. Okay, so maybe that's part of the reason to try and have some prophylaxis against f5 as well as the b file. And then we see f5 being forcibly put in there, and then a change of mind actually after rook b8 not to play f5 here. Is this very subtle stuff going on? If we played f5 here, maybe it's not so bad. d5. So there's a change of plan that occurred there. Just to go back, computer not minding changing its mind in a particular position, just to exchange off rooks here with that rook committed. I guess you could argue with that rook committed, black can't castle queenside, so it makes more sense therefore to go via the h file to get into black's position. So the advantage after king e7 I think is going to be increased if we think of this as a thematic pawn move, f4, f5. It does some more damage potentially to black's position. Now why did the black queen come off b8? Because otherwise queen d4 and e5 is not so easy to play for, surely. Let's try a different move. Let's just try bishop c8. Okay, so e5 is apparently possible anyway. The queen is actually on this potential diagonal, so that's pretty dangerous. If d5, bishop a4, queen c5 protecting the pawn, knight e2. Is black getting really, really passive here? It looks to be quite bad, this position, intuitively. Queen g5 now on the cards. And tactics start to emerge, like bishop takes c6, for example, is interesting. As an example. With some overloading because of this knight on e6. And here there's either not knight c6, queen a6, even queen a5 even stronger, with big advantage. So black was getting, it seems as though black was getting done in anyway before having to queen e7. So let's go back. So queen b8, so allowing queen d4, and white's advantage is just gone out of control actually here. After queen d4, it seems white's advantage has gone out of control just with this thematic break threat. So black's got desperate, just sacking this pawn. That's quite easily consolidated, and white goes back for the other thematic break, just f5 from earlier. And this is starting to do real damage. If d5 can be ruptured, as it is with this bishop g4, encouraging that e pawn forward. Well, black didn't even gave up another pawn to stop that. If the computer plays e5, then queen d5 is massive now. Okay. For example, queen f7 on f8. That bishop is actually a real target. takes queen g8. Now what's the threat, you might ask? Let's give a token move. The queen's holding c4 here. Alright, queen g7. Okay. So we get a general picture that d5 is an invasion point. Once e5 is provoked, d5 is an invasion point. Lots of access routes into black's position. Okay, so black is seemingly crumbling by force. Well, losing another pawn is a sign it's all over. It's not worth looking at from here. This will be an example, just defending, and then c5 is loose. White's loads of material up. So anyway, it was after king c8 that white won by adjudication. So we have here a potentially dangerous new engine. There are lots of other game examples. Do we take something about the bishop pair here, the bishop pair being squashed? This was the basis of that very famous Ivanchuk versus Kasparov game, which is featured on the channel. It's a classic encounter where Kasparov was absolutely crushed. Now, are we saying that Houdini 3.0 can simulate a similar strategy, not minding giving up the bishop pair if it can assess the squashing opportunities of the bishops? The dark square bishop didn't really have much of a game here, and when it did, loads of material down and easy to parry that b2 threat. So interesting stuff. Please let me know should we check out some other games. Hope you enjoyed it. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.